Well, the View from the West podcast season is winding down. The last week of regular podcasts for the 2024 football season. But Mitch, we still got a lot to discuss and a lot to decide here.
Greg, start the drum roll, roll out the red carpet. It is time for our 5th annual Best in the West Awards for the 2024 season. Let's take a look back at these great performances, great games, great coaches, all around great performances from this year. We're going to hand out some hardware.
Are you ready, Mitch? That's the ballot being opened up right there. Let's give out some hardware. Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into a very special episode of View from the West podcast. It is the 5th annual Best in the West Awards for the 2024 football season. Mitch, it's all the superlatives, it's all the names, all the stats here. It's the big time. It's the awards episode. The red carpet's rolled out. Do you have a tux on or no?
Not wearing a tux. I put on my finest I just say State Finals hoodie. Very appropriate for the show, I think. This isn't a suit and tie affair, Greg. We're football guys here, so no, in my hoodie. But yeah, this night is always a lot of fun. Always a great episode every year. Like you said, this is our 5th time doing it. Fun to look back. Just look at these great players, great coaches, great games, and give out some hardware this year.
Yeah. First, I want to thank all of the coaches, all of the athletic directors, a lot of times even just the fans who have helped us compile stats and kind of gather some numbers here. It really is a community effort. So we've been combing through the numbers. We've got plenty of stats, plenty of details from this season, ready to get into it, talk about the best of the best that was the football season in 2024. So Mitch, this is our farewell week here. We're wrapping up, But it's not just one episode. We got 2 episodes this week. So as you're listening to this podcast, depending on when you're listening to this comes out Tuesday morning. We also have a second episode this week. Mitch, another annual tradition around here, the View from the West fantasy draft. So I encourage everyone to get out, listen to that episode. After you listen to this one, of course, a lot of the names that are included in this episode, you'll hear them being drafted by myself and Mitch, along with Ty Taylor and Kyle Kampmeyer. That episode's always a ton of fun.
Yeah, and again, I know I just said it, but anytime after an exciting football year like we had this year, and certainly every year, just to have these 2 episodes where we look back at everything and it'll jog your memory if you forgot something, or just, again, helps you appreciate the talent that we get to cover. So fun to put those kids and these teams and, again, coaches in the spotlight here on these episodes.
Yep, a ton of talent from around our area, and I'm excited to talk about it in this episode. So before we get into it, though, I do want to take a minute to, obviously thank everyone who listened, who follows along this season. You can find us on X. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. Go out, follow, subscribe, get all the info you need. Obviously, you listen to these episodes, but then we have a lot of videos and a lot of fun content that goes along with this episode that will be out on those channels as well. So I encourage everyone, if you're not already, go out and follow us on those social media platforms. And Mitch, if we're talking about a great season, we got to talk about a great sponsor. Tell us who they need to know about. They already know, but tell them again.
Oh, they know. The listeners know. Everyone knows that tonight's episode, as it has all season, is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer brand names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
Well, we have a lot of reasons to thank Breedloves throughout the season, but in this episode in particular. So, Mitch, over the years, in this episode, we've always kind of joked about handing out hardware, but it was, always kind of, just that make believe, the idea of hardware. But now, Breedlove Sporting Goods has made this a reality. We are actually, courtesy of our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, shipping out hardware. So our Player of the Year winners will receive their own trophy from View from the West and Breedloves. I am really excited about that.
Yeah, I specifically left out awards in that ad read because I wanted to, again, highlight it a little bit more that, yes, our partners at Breedloves have really been collaborative on this idea to actually give out some physical trophies as opposed to us just talking about it. So really excited for the kids to get these gifts. And Breedloves did a great job on it.
So those individuals who win the Player of the Year award for each conference or each division within their conference will receive a trophy, but that's not it. The Team of the Year winners from 11-man and a Team of the Year winner from 8-man will also receive team t-shirts, courtesy of Breedloves. So we've seen some mock-ups for that. They'll get their View from the West Team of the Year t-shirts. That'll be sent to the players, the coaching staff, so they can show off with pride, Mitch, throughout the year and going into next year's football season that they were the Team of the Year, the best in the West. So very excited about all of that and really excited to get into it here.
Yeah, a very exclusive shirt. Never been done before. And as you mentioned, only one team's going to be getting those t-shirts. But again, really, really cool. Love our partnership with Breedloves to make this kind of a reality.
Yep. All right, so here we go. The Best in the West Awards, our 5th annual. I can't believe we're here. Number 5. Here's how it goes. We're going to give out awards for several different categories. We'll do Game of the Year. That'll be 1 overall from around our area, including all the 8-man games and the 11-man games. We'll have our Coach of the Year, so 1 from each conference or division. We'll also have our Defense of the Year. So we'll have 1 overall Defense of the Year. We'll have a few nominees in that category. We'll have a Team of the Year, as we discussed, 1 from 11-man, 1 from 8-man. And then the Player of the Year, we'll give out 1 from each conference or each division. And then one of those winners will be given the honor. They'll be named our View from the West Player of the Year. So here we are, Mitch. It's year number 5. And we looked back at our Players of the Year winners for our first 4 seasons. So let's go back and recap them here real quick. In 2021, in that spring season, Kane Smith from United Township. Remember how UT burst on the scene in that shortened 6-game season? And Kane Smith was a huge part of that. Over, I think, 1,400 yards in 6 games. Really did a number for them and really propelled them to a great spring season there. In 2021, in the fall, it was Mari Roby from Lena Winslow, helped the Panthers win a state championship. He was an electric athlete, so much fun to cover. He was our winner in the fall of 2021. In 2022, for the first time, we had a split vote. We had co-winners of our Player of the Year between Tegan Davis from Princeton and Mac Rasetich from Spring Valley Hall. If you remember those two, they were in the same conference. They were battling each other, and their play on the field was very similar. Their numbers were very similar. We just could not decipher a winner between that one. So that was our co-winners that year in 2022. Last year in 2023, it was Braden Little. He has a chance to defend his crown from last year. We'll see if he can get that done. That'll be near the end of this episode, so stick around for that. But here we are, Mitch, the 5th annual, as we said. It's awesome. Should we start with Game of the Year? Look back at some of the best games, some of the best teams we had and came down to the wire. Let's get into our Games of the Year.
All right, yeah, let's do it. We dug through the archives here this season. Have about I don't know, 8 games or so, but yeah, let's look back. Let me start here, Greg. I'm gonna go back to week 5. Okay, this was a game in the track Erie Prophetstown came away with a 20-14 win over Mercer County. Not only that, but they came back from 14 down, 20 unanswered points to pick up the win. Keegan Winkler threw a 12-yard touchdown pass with 15 seconds left. That was the first lead of the game, and it clinched this win for the Panthers. So, again, that midseason win, it was really important for EP, and to score 20 unanswered, great game here.
Yeah, I think some games are important because of, the play on the field and how the game plays out. Some games become game of the year candidates because of the context that it means for their season. I think this game had a little bit of both, right? You had Erie Prophetstown and Mercer County both fighting, knowing this game was crucial to their playoff chances. And it was Erie Prophetstown getting the win, and you see they go on to advance to the playoffs. So I think this game had a little bit of everything in that aspect and a huge comeback from Erie Prophetstown. So yeah, that's certainly a game deserving to be on the list.
Yeah, and I'll go to the next one too, because you talked about games that, looking back, really kind of set the tone for the year. Didn't know it at the time, but again, with the benefit of hindsight, it really did. I'm going all the way back to week 1. This is Western Big Six out of conference play. Moline getting the 41-40 win over Rockwood Summit out of Missouri. Moline led pretty handily with a couple minutes left. They led 34-21. Summit comes all the way back. They score a couple of late touchdowns. The second one ties the game with 32 seconds left. The Maroons block the extra point, sends this game to overtime. Then again, Summit scores right away, but misses the extra point. This would be important because Colin Fredrickson would run into the end zone for the Maroons. That would tie the game. And as we have just been talked about in the summary, special teams, a big part of this game, Maroon kicker Nolan Ducey, who had missed 2 extra points earlier in the contest, boots it right through the uprights. Moline wins the game. Place goes nuts. And again, you look at that game at that point in time, didn't know how much that would, steer Moline's season. But looking back now, you can point right back to it and what a win this was for them.
Yeah, I mean, we knew they had some tough non-conference games, and they answered the call in this one. That was a big win for Moline and a great redemption story for Nolan Ducey, right? To miss 2 of them, and then when the game comes in clutch, you lock it in. Coaches trust you to send you back out there, and hey, that you get that one that counts. The only one that counts, really, maybe in the grand scheme of things. So,
right.
Yep, that's a good one. So that was week 1 of the season. Talk about week 2. The very next week, we saw another one, a good conference rivalry here. Came down to the wire.
Yeah, we've seen this a lot the last couple of years. It's Stark County and Anawan Wethersfield. Stark County getting that week 2 win, 14-13. Again, close battle between these rivals. Always seems that they play close games. Second year in a row, it's a 1-point game. Rebels grabbed the win. Nolan Orwig scored with a minute left, and that gave them the 14-13 lead, and they would hang on to secure that victory. And again, at the time, I think preseason we had predicted these 2 teams to really be battling it out for that division crown. And when Wethersfield had some injuries later in the year, but again, if you look at Stark County's season and how they were co-champions, and really it was kind of like a 3-way tie towards the end of the season, getting this win proved crucial for them to get that representative crown from the IHSA.
Yeah, 2 teams that we knew would be battling at the top of that conference. It's a big rivalry there, and it's early in the season, but it's still, you knew it meant a lot, and it was another great game. And another conference rivalry the very next week in week 3 takes us to the Northwest Upstate Illini. This was a great football game.
This is another one that you can look back and think, boy, this game really, and even if you go back to week 2, I'll get to that in a second, this game really propelled Galena to have the season that they did. And you go back to week 2 where they beat Morrison, and even that game you were kind of surprised by it because they beat Morrison kind of handedly. But in this one, Galena beat Forreston 19-18. Forreston had won 8 straight in this series, but Galena takes the late lead with 2 minutes left. They scored 18 points in the final 3 minutes. Wouldn't be the only time this year that Galena had a crazy comeback, certainly when you talk in the playoffs. But what a great year for Galena. And again, you can kind of point back to this early part of the season where these wins proved crucial.
Yeah. And Galena could have been on this list twice, really. If you want to put their game in the playoffs against Stark County, that was a wild finish. and a crazy win. So maybe we'll just kind of add that in as another game here in the list, that Galena win over Stark County in the postseason. So, all right, let's keep moving along. In week 5, you had Newman getting the win 15-7 in overtime over Rock Ridge. Tell us how this one played out, Mitch.
Yeah, we were looking forward to this game at the time. I remember it. Rock Ridge being the defending division champions. Newman, that great defense, played well all night, shut out this Rock Ridge offense. They only scored on a pick 6, but this game goes to overtime. Newman gets the 15-7 win. Briar Ivy scored on the first play of overtime, and then Matthew Blacker came up with a big interception to seal this win. That would propel the Comets to the division crowd for the first time, I think, since 2017. So this was a huge win for Newman.
Well, and then skip ahead to week 6, another overtime game. Farmington gets the win 26-20 over Macomb. This was a game we kind of had circled early in the season, kind of seeing how things would play out. And it matched expectations. Both teams came into that one undefeated, and it came down to the wire. It came into the clutch.
And Macomb led this game 14-0, but Farmington would fight all the way back. They would eventually take a 20-14 lead, but Macomb would answer right back, a game-tying touchdown early in the 4th. But who else? Carter Lambin blocks the extra point, keeps this game tied at 20. It would go to overtime. Lane Wheelwright strikes first in OT, and then it was Jack Ronald on defense with the rest of that Farmington unit, gets the interception and seals the victory for the Farmers.
Yeah, great win for Farmington over a really good Macomb program. And like I said, this is a game we were excited about. It lived up to the billing.
Yep.
I want to talk about a couple games in 8-man here, Mitch.
Okay.
One of the games that really caught my attention this year, we talked a lot about West Carroll. The Thunder had a great season, making their debut in 8-man football, after struggling in 11-man. And this win in the first round of the playoffs, they win over Flanagan Cornell Woodland 20-17 in the opening round of the postseason in 8-man football. I think this was kind of the exclamation point on their season. Defensive tackle Aiden West and defensive end Cole Harrell make a goal line stop. They get the tackle on fullback Elijah Detweiler inside the 1-yard line in the final minute to seal that win for the Thunder. There was video out there from JT Petaldy and Friday Night Drive. They were all over it. And just what a win. What an exciting playoff win for this Thunder community, this team that was so anxious to kind of get back there, right? And just kind of play some meaningful football. To get a playoff win like that, that was a huge game for me. One other 8-man game, though, that kind of stood out to us throughout the year. Tell us about the Ridgewood over Amboy game.
Yeah, well, this was, a rematch of the state championship the year prior. Amboy had kind of had Ridgewood's number, beat them earlier in the year. It was a week 1 or week 2 game.
Yep.
But then Ridgewood just kind of took it to him, ran all over that really great Amboy defense and came away with a 34-22 win. And again, at the time, we're talking week 4, we kind of started having that conversation. Well, is there going to be a new champion? Is Amboy going to make it back? Is this Ridgewood's year? So yeah, at the time, this was a fantastic game. It was a surprising result at the time, at least to me. No disrespect to Ridgewood and their performance that night, because they played really, really great. But again, I think it was more of the surprise element, beating Amboy the way that they beat them.
Yeah. So to add a little more context, like you mentioned, they had gotten, Ridgewood had gotten beaten very handily by Amboy in the state championship game the year before. In week 1 of this season, it was Amboy getting the 36-8 win at home against Ridgewood. But then when they have to go on the road to Ridgewood or to Cambridge to play Ridgewood in week 5, that was the 34-22 win for the Spartans. So yeah, I think it was after 2 defeats in a row, it's kind of one of those, like, that mentality creeps into your head about, Amboy's got our number. How do we beat them? And credit to Coach Elder and to that program for overcoming it and really playing well in that game and really kind of, catapulting their season. Now, as things play out, Amboy proved to be a very good football team, which they win a state championship, but I think it kind of even more solidifies how good Ridgewood was this year, right? That they did manage to beat that team who was a state champion. We'll talk more about Amboy down the road, but in this case, yeah, I do think that's a player or a game of the year candidate for sure because of kind of what it meant at the time.
You want to talk some offense here, Greg?
Yeah, yes, we have one more game here, Mitch. Let's talk about week 7. Now, 2 teams that did not make the playoffs, but man, they certainly left their mark in this one. Knoxville gets the win, 80-52 over West Hancock. Mitch, give us the numbers.
Ooh, there's a lot. An incredibly high scoring game, as you just mentioned. 132 combined points, 702 rushing yards in this one for Knoxville, 5th best in Illinois history. They had 11 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the 4th most in Illinois history. As we mentioned, 702 total yards. So Knoxville did not pass in this game, 20th all time. And the combined score, again, 132 points, is tied for the 12th most in Illinois history. So, yeah, if you were at this game, you saw a lot of scoring. Would have been a lot of fun to see. But boy, 702 rushing yards in a game. That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so there we go, Mitch. There's the rundown of all the games, the big games throughout the season. I'll let you start here. What's your game of the year?
Let me add some context here to something that we just kind of teased, and that was that Stark County Galena playoff game. Okay.
Yeah.
Stark County led that game 42-28 with 6.5 minutes left. Galena came down and scored 42-35. They pull off an onside kick, get it back. They end up scoring. Miles Schumacher scores on a 2-point conversion. They take that lead 43-42 with 1:30 left. And again, this is a playoff game. So what an atmosphere this was. Stark County came back, but Galena's defense held tight. So it was just an incredible finish. It was one of those where we were so busy trying to follow all of our first round games. And it was like, well, it looks like Stark County's got this one in the bag. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of watching all these other games, it's like, nope, Galena won. And you're trying to scratch your head, figure out how that happened. So a phenomenal game there. Greg, I might have a late switch. That one might be my game of the year, because that was just, again, the feeling at the time was just, how did they do that? And then seeing it, reading about it, what a great comeback for Galena. That'll be my game of the year. Yeah,
I agree. I'm glad you added the context there, because we mentioned it in the kind of list of things when we talked about the other Galena game. But no, that's a great call. That was a great game. I'm going to stick with that same weekend. I'm giving the nod to West Carroll here, only because of the bigger picture. I think that the West Carroll story that we had kind of talked about throughout the year, and them getting this win, I think just in that atmosphere in a playoff game to get that win get that goal line stop down to the wire. I'm going to go with the Thunder here in their 20-17 win over Flanagan Cornell Woodland. That's my game of the year.
That's a fair pick. Great choice.
Yep. This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodman representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodman website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodman representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodman of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodman of America.
View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel, gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support. All right, well, Mitch, let's get into our Coach of the Year. So we'll go through, we'll name one coach from each conference. We'll start in the Western Big Six. I think it's three names that, if we're being honest, we probably say these names every year for the most part. Three nominees: Rick Little, Mike Morrissey, John Schlemmer.
Yeah, but let's start with Rick Little and Quincy. Certainly the back-to-back undefeated Western Big Six champions, back-to-back appearances in the 7A quarterfinals. Boy, he had a senior class, and obviously Rick's been there for a really long time. He's watched these kids grow up. Certainly his son, Braden, a part of that class. But to see it all kind of come together, one of the most talented groups I've ever, covered, certainly on this show. Talent everywhere you looked, a great defense, great team. Certainly we've talked a lot about, their path in 7A has been roadblocked the last couple of years by the CCL, but a phenomenal team. Certainly when you talk about Quincy's history, the two best teams in the history of that school. So yeah, Rick Little is certainly a nominee here for Coach of the Year.
Yep. You also have Mike Morrissey, who surpassed win number 50 at Moline. He brought the Maroons back to the playoffs after missing the playoffs a year ago. So I think that this was a team that we thought had some, expectations, and certainly, I think internally their goals are, to be in the playoff mix every year, and to miss it last year, to get them back there. I think that puts Mike Morrissey on this list. One more in John Schlemmer, a name, again, Mitch, we've talked about him year in and year out. He's a candidate in this list, leads the Golden Warriors to the playoffs once again. He becomes Sterling High School's all-time winningest coach, surpassing 100 career wins at Sterling. So a couple milestones there for Coach Schlemmer, but bringing this group into the postseason once again, I think that puts him on this list as well.
Yeah, three phenomenal candidates here. Greg, I'll let you unveil the winner here in this first category for Western Big Six.
Yeah, I think for me, when we're opening up the ballot, I think it comes down to just the dominance that we've seen from Quincy this year and over the last couple years. I think it's not a legacy award. It's a yearly award. But once again, what Rick Little has done and having this team ready to execute game in and game out, I think for our Western Big Six Coach of the Year, open up the ballot. Rick Little from Quincy, congratulations. You are the View from the West Western Big Six Coach of the Year. So let's move into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Mitch, will start in the track Mississippi. Give us the coaches, the nominees for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, three coaches here once again in the track Mississippi. Greg, we saw a new conference champion in this division this year, so that means we got to set our eyes to Monmouth Roseville and head coach Jeremy Adolphson. What a year that the Titans had in 2024. I also look at, always in this category, Ryan Pearson from Princeton, another 10-win year for the Tigers, and another trip to the 3A quarterfinals. Then how about Matthew Taylor and the job he's done at Kewanee, back to the playoffs for the Boilermakers. Certainly that community is fired up for postseason football, and a great year for Coach Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. All three of these candidates, three coaches that I have a ton of respect for. I think they all do a great job leading their programs. So Mitch, I'll let you start the discussion here. Where's your head go on this one?
Well, we've been so accustomed, I think, over certainly the course of the history of this show. And I want to say it was 7 consecutive years going into 2024 that Princeton kind of had a grip on this division. But boy, here come the Titans, and they made their presence known pretty loud in that game against Princeton. They came away with the win, and that would propel them to their first ever conference crown, snapping that long streak that Princeton held. So for me, my vote goes to head coach Jeremy Adolphson of Monmouth Roseville as the Track Mississippi Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. I think that, that Monmouth Roseville win over Princeton and the way that they won that game, that atmosphere was electric that night. Such a cool game to be at. It could have been a game of the year candidate, I think, but honestly, it was kind of a runaway win. So there wasn't really, there wasn't really drama in the game, but just again, like we talked about those game of the years within the context of it, it was a huge win for Monmouth Roseville's program, right? To get over kind of that hurdle that has been Princeton in the Three Rivers, I think is a huge statement for that program. So yeah, I lean Jeremy Adolphson because of that win and because they were, they had goals, and that was one of the goals, to be a conference champion. You had to get through Princeton, and they got that job done. I would also just give a quick shout out to Matt Taylor, they lost in week 1, if you remember, to Erie Prophetstown at home. And we kind of looked around and thought wow, great win for Erie Prophetstown. What does that say about Kewanee? And they really bounced back, and they had a great season. So I like, that the job that Matt Taylor's doing there to get them back into the postseason. We'll talk about some of the players that helped him along the way. But in this vote, yes, I'm going with you. I agree. Jeremy Adolphson, the coach of the year in the Mississippi.
Also, he surpassed 100 career wins this year. So shout out again, another accolade to Coach Adolphson.
That's right. I believe that was in the Princeton game. I think it was
that game. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Perfect.
Yep. So anyway, all right. Well, here we go. Should we head over to the Three Rivers Athletic Conference rock side of things? Mitch, give us the nominees.
The nominees for this year's Track Rock Coach of the Year are Mike LeMay from Sterling Newman. Comets get their first outright conference title since 2017, and Coach LeMay gets Newman back into the playoffs. How about Rock Ridge and Sam Graves, another standout season, making it to the 2A quarterfinals and had that great game against Farmington there. And then lastly, third candidate, Guy Diericks from Riverdale. This has been a program that we've talked about for years, have struggled with numbers. They went 0-9 last year. They, sat out an entire year. This year, they really looked good, came back, improved to 4-5. We've got some great talent coming back next year, had a shot at getting to the playoffs this year. What a job that Coach Diericks has done in Riverdale.
Yeah, so I think when you look through these three nominees, it was Mike LeMay and Sam Graves. I think at the beginning of the season, if you'd asked us who's going to be the coach of the year, I think each of us might have said one of those names, correct? Mm-hmm. I think those are the names you kind of expected to be here. And for good reason, right? Their programs are playing at a high level. I think for me, I look at the job that Guy Diericks is doing at Riverdale, and to go from 0-9, and the year before that, you didn't even have a varsity football team. I think to go from where they were to where they're at now, Mitch, we were talking about there was a chance that Riverdale was going to make the playoffs this year. There's excitement around this Riverdale team. It was not a gimme win on the schedule for teams in the Three Rivers. I think all those things are a testament to what Coach Diericks is doing there. So, Mitch, if we're going to open up the ballot, here we go. Let's open up the ballot. Congratulations to Guy Diericks. He is our Three Rivers Athletic Conference Rock Division Coach of the Year. Well-deserved there. Like you mentioned, it's a great season. They have good numbers in their lower levels. It seems like momentum is really building for this program. And man, that's a community that's starved for, football success, right? They just, it's been a grind to get back to where they're at even right now. And so congratulations to Coach Diericks and those players.
Yeah, that's it. Again, that point there is just a further credit to Coach Diericks for sticking it out, right? You've seen similar situations where coaches don't stick around, but certainly Coach Diericks, a Riverdale grad, has a lot of pride there, and has, kind of seeing his work kind of come to fruition and getting this team back on track. Also, Greg, if I can make a mea culpa real quick, that Rockridge Farmington game was in the second round, not the quarterfinals. My mistake on that.
Okay. Okay. Yep. There you go.
I want to be thorough in my mistakes.
All right. Should we move into the Lincoln Land Conference and give out a couple Coach of the Year awards here?
Yeah.
We'll start in the large school side of the LLC. Give us the nominees, Mitch.
Yeah, the nominees here in the LLC large side, 3 great candidates. Let's start with Toby Vallis at Farmington, conference champions, led the Farmers to that top rank in the 2A bracket, and led them to the school's first ever trip to the state semifinals. What a year the Farmers had. Speaking of great years, how about Elmwood Brimfield and Coach Hollis, Todd Hollis, 4-5 last year, improved to a 9-2 team this year in the playoffs. Great season. That team was a lot of fun to watch run over a lot of opponents this year. And boy, how about Jacob Calvin at Illini West? The Chargers started 0-3. This team got back on track, 6 straight wins to close out the year, get back into the playoffs. Fell eventually to the eventual state champions in that first round. But boy, what an effort to get that team back into the playoffs.
One more shout out, one more nominee I think I'd toss in there. How about Tanner Horrell, the head coach at Macomb? We talked about this Macomb Bombers team earlier. They were 4-5 in 2023. They bounced back this season with a playoff berth and 7 wins and a really good regular. They took Farmington, to overtime, which we talked about. So I'd also toss Tanner Horrell in there. But Mitch, give us the breakdown here of the nominees and who you think is our Coach of the Year.
Again, you talk about Coach Hollis and Coach Calvin really turning their programs around this year, getting back into the playoffs. But I don't think enough can be said about what Coach Vallis has done at Farmington the last couple of seasons and really his entire career. But this group in particular, a great group of kids, very talented group, as mentioned, conference champions, undefeated, get to their first ever trip to the state semifinals, Greg. My vote for the LLC Large Coach of the Year goes to Toby Vallis of Farmington.
Congratulations to Coach Vallis. It's been really fun, Mitch. Just kind of on a side note, it's been really great as we've added the Prairie Land over the last couple years to kind of get in contact with Coach Vallis. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate, his back and forth. The information he provides to us is always great. So, congratulations to Coach Vallis and Farmington. We'll talk more about that program down the way here in some other awards, but really great effort by him and the program he leads there. He is our Coach of the Year in the LLC large side of things. Let's get into the LLC small side of things. Mitch, this was maybe one of the most difficult votes, I think, for us as we kind of sorted through everything.
Yeah, this year, this division was a lot of fun to cover because you saw some kind of jockeying in the standings of some teams and programs that maybe hadn't been up there in a couple of years. I would start right with Princeville here and Coach John Carruthers, a team and a program that, traditionally, or at least in the past couple of years, have been sitting around that 500 mark. Got to the playoffs last year, but this year was a little bit different. They start 7-0, get back into the playoffs, had a lot of close wins. So a great job there in Princeville from Coach Carruthers. How about Rushford Industry and Coach Brian Lafferty, 3-6 last year. This year, co-champions of the LLC Small and a return to the playoffs with their season ending at 8-1. Speaking of co-champions, how could we talk about Coaches of the Year nominees without speaking about Jade Nord from Stark County? Another fantastic year for them. Certainly we talked about that heartbreaking loss to Galena in the playoffs, but a great year for the Rebels. Again, co-champions on top of that conference once again.
Coach Jade Nord, even as an Iowa fan, he's still a great football mind. How about that?
Yeah, love that. So yeah, and again, this was a fun year in the LLC Small. Fun to see teams like Princeville and Rushford Industry kind of rise to the top here.
Yep. And another name, Tony Grip from Anawan Weathersfield. That program, the expectations are always, playoffs, quarterfinals. Yep. It's always be at the top of your conference, make a playoff run. And Tony Grip since he's taken over, he keeps them right there. And I will say he could deserve a nomination here just through the injuries that they battled through this year. And he kind of kept this team moving in the right direction, right? Like kept them going week by week, kind of plugging players in the right places. And the players stepped up and answered the call, but Tony Grip was leading the way. I'd give him a nomination as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Started the season 1-2 with those injuries, but battled all the way back. We'll talk about Maddox Heitzler later in the show, but yeah, that's a great call there.
Yep. All right. Well, when we're breaking it all down and looking at these nominees, Mitch, I think for our coach of the year in the LLC small division, I think I'm going with that, that rise up story. And I think I'm looking at the excitement of Rushville Industry. We saw the way that community really got excited about this group, and it had been a few years, and this was a group they were excited about, but obviously you got to produce on the field at the varsity level. And this team showed up and they did the job. They finished the season at 8-2. Congratulations to head coach Brian Lafferty from Rushville Industry, our LLC small school coach of the year. All right, so here we go, Mitch. We're diving into the Northwest Upstate Illini. When we're talking coaches in the Northwest Upstate Illini, there's a few familiar names, couple familiar names in here, but maybe a couple names again that have kind of rose up on the board as well. Let's get into it. What are the names, Mitch, for the Northwest Upstate Illini?
Yeah, well, start with the guy who has been here probably every year that we've done this, and that's, of course, head coach Rick Arent of Lena Winslow. Another conference championship for the Panthers. Greg, it's funny to see it. It's funny to say it. 5th straight appearance in the Class 1A state championship. Yeah. Certainly back-to-back runner-ups in those games, but boy, just racking up the wins, racking up the trophies. Another fantastic year for Coach Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said familiar names. Another familiar name. How about Tyler Hoffman from Dupec? Led the Rivermen to their first 10-win season in program history. Back-to-back 3A quarterfinal appearances for the first, or back-to-back 3A quarterfinal appearances for the first time. He became the winningest coach in the program's history with 51 wins. So that Dupec program there, he is the winningest head coach. So great effort from him. But another name on the list here as well. Mitch, tell us about Ed Freed, a name we know, but he's back in this nomination. Well-deserved.
Yeah, this was, again, a fun year for Galena. We talked about him a little bit there in the beginning, but turned this Pirates program around this year. They were 3-6 last year, certainly in that very tough NUIC conference. But they made a statement this year, got back into the playoffs as a 12 seed and got all the way to the quarterfinals. So this was a fun Pirates team to cover, and just a tremendous job by Coach Freed this year.
Yeah. A couple more names there. Sean Downey from Stockton. Great season from him, kind of jumping their program back into the playoff mix. Same thing with Jared McNutt from Eastland Pearl City, getting that program back into the playoff mix in the NUIC. We talked about it all year. It's not easy to make that move in the Northwest Upstate Illini, and those coaches were able to do it along with Ed Freed from Galena. Putting their names in the list with Rick Aaron and Tyler Hoffman is certainly, good company. So Mitch, where we go here, our NUIC Coach of the Year. Give us your thoughts. Who's the winner?
This is a tough one. This was maybe the next conference that we had to really think about, and it was a tough decision. I think it's hard to compare success when we're talking Lena Winslow, because there's that expectation that they're going to do it every single year, right? And that's much easier said than done. And that's certainly an unfair sort of tag to put on Lena Winslow. But again, 5 straight appearances in the Class 1A championship. What more can you say? So when I look at this category and in this conference, I pivot a little bit more to first-time accomplishments as opposed to sustained success. And that's where I'm looking here for my NUIC Coach of the Year. I'm pointing at Tyler Hoffman from Dupec. Like you mentioned, this was the first 10-win season in the program's history. This is the first time they've been back-to-back 3A quarterfinals. And again, just to repeat winningest coach in program history with 51 wins. And certainly, as of this episode announced today, it came out that he is stepping down from that position. And so what a great season it was to be the final one that he was at the helm. So for me, my Coach of the Year in the NUIC goes to Tyler Hoffman from Dupec.
Yeah, I was really torn on this one. I was leaning Rick Aaron because it's really, I might say my pick is Rick Arend, and that's
that's fine.
That's certainly no disrespect or slight to Tyler Hoffman, but I think I might lean Rick Arend because of the accomplishments you listed out, and it becomes the expectation in Lena to be there, but you still got to get it done, and that team is executing at a high level, and so I would lean there, but I will say yes. Coach Hoffman is very deserving. It's 1A, 1B. I don't know how to pick one over the other. And I would agree with you in the fact that what Coach Hoffman has done to build this program up and continue to make incremental steps, right? They didn't win the conference this year, but they do get the accomplishment of a 10-win season. They get the accomplishment of going back to the 3A quarterfinals. There's just little things along the way that he continued to build. And I think that that's where his nomination is very deserving and his winning it is very deserving. So you can't go wrong here between Tyler Hoffman and Coach Arend. You can't go wrong with any of these coaches because they're doing such a great job in the best conference in the state, right? I'll just say it. It's maybe not the best, not even the best small school conference. I think it's the best competitive conference in the state. So you can't go wrong if you're coaching in this conference and you're on this list, but between Rick Arend and Tyler Hoffman, I will say those are two very deserving candidates. Congratulations to both of them. It's a split vote between Mitch and I, but there you go. All right. Let's get into the 8-man I8FA Coaches of the Year candidates, nominees from our area. Mitch, give us the rundown here.
Yeah, I look at 3 in particular here in 8-man. Certainly you start at the top, right? Coach Scott Payne with the Amboy, back-to-back state champions. They have looked so impressive over the last 2 years, and then certainly in both of those state championship games. Speaking of that state championship this year, how about Jason Roble with Milledgeville? First ever trip for the Missiles to get to the state championship. And what was great, the first time they've gotten past the quarterfinals too. They've always kind of had that roadblock. So
correct.
A tremendous season for the Missiles this year. And I'll go Ted Alston at Polo. Undefeated regular season. They won that Battle of the Blacktop. And so a lot of great excitement, a lot of great players there for Polo. So for me, those are my 3 nominees, Greg.
Couple more nominees, Mitch. Pat Elder from Ridgewood. I continue to be impressed with what he does with that Spartans program. We talked about their win over Amboy in the regular season, kind of overcoming that, that mountain that is Amboy and, getting that job done in the middle of the season. And how about, we talked about Wes Carroll earlier in the episode, but Abelardo Ceseda, what he did there to go from 0-9 in 11-man football to then have a playoff appearance and a playoff win in 8-man, I think is just a testament to what he was able to build there. And I think I'm interested to see what they continue to build there. So there's a bunch of names there, but Mitch, I think there's kind of one name that stands above the rest when we're talking about the 8-man Coach of the Year from our area.
Yeah. For me, it's been the job of Scott Payne with Amboy. Again, what a tremendous job he's doing there with that program in 8-man, back-to-back state champions. What more can you say? They've looked great every year. They put some new players on the field, but they have the similar success. So another fantastic year for Amboy. Certainly anticipate that continuing with that program with Coach Payne at the helm.
Yep. I think when we talked about their, stumbling block in the regular season, in the middle of the season with Ridgewood, then to bounce back. But even going into that state championship game, I feel like a lot of hype was surrounding Milledgeville heading into that game, and for good reason. Milledgeville was playing really good football, but it was like, as things progressed, Amboy just kept kind of doing what they do, right? And that's a credit to Coach Payne. That group, that Clippers team was ready to go once again in the state championship game. So I would agree with you. I think that Scott Payne is the View from the West 8-man Coach of the Year.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the Three Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune in to For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
All right, so the next award up is our Defense of the Year. Mitch will go through some nominees, some teams that are worthy of it from across our area, from every different conference. Teams like Quincy, you have Newman and Rock Ridge from the Three Rivers, also Princeton and Monmouth Roseville, Farmington from the from the LLC, along with Anawan Wethersfield and Stark County. In the Northwest Upstate Illini, you got to look at Lena Winslow, Eastland Pearl City, Dupec, Polo in 8-man, along with Amboy, Milledgeville, Ridgewood. Those are some of the names that kind of stand out. But Mitch, let's narrow it down. Give me the nominees for Defense of the Year.
Okay. Yeah, we had a lot of great defensive units this year, but yeah, let's cut it down to 3. I'll give you my 3. Let's go to the Western Big Six, the champions. Quincy only allowing 185 points all year. Certainly a tremendous compliment to that offense. 7 games this year, allowing 2 scores or less. Speaking of not allowing a lot of points, how about Farmington, the Farmers? 9 games this year, allowing 1 score or less, including 4 shutouts, propelled them all the way to the 2A semifinals. And you mentioned it. Let's give 8-man some love. How about Polo? Greg, 45 allowed points in the regular season, only 76 throughout the entire year. That's an unbelievable number.
Yeah, that number is incredible. When you start looking at, the fact that it is what it is, 8-man football is kind of known for higher scores, right? Yeah. And so for Polo to put up numbers like that defensively, 1, it shows you that it's not all about offense, in 8-man football. But 2, this credit to Coach Alston and to that Polo Marcos team and that staff, that was an elite defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mitch, I'll let you go ahead here. You did the deep dive on these teams. Give me our Defense of the Year from View from the West.
Yeah, for me, my envelope is going to read the Farmington Farmers. As mentioned, 9 games this year, only allowing a score or less. It was that defense in the playoffs that just really helped them round by round. If you go back to round 1, wasn't the most exciting game for them offensively, but they just shut down DMAC. Go to the second round, not completely, but shut down that Rock Ridge offense better than most teams do. Add that into the quarterfinals where they did the same thing against a really good Dwight program. And then if you look and see what Chicago Christian did in the state championship game, it makes that semifinal performance from Farmington look all that more impressive. So this unit was always going to put Farmington in a great spot to be successful. Again, a great compliment to that very talented offensive unit. So to Coach Vallis, his defensive staff, and that all the players on this defensive unit, my Defense of the Year goes to the Farmington Farmers.
I think the View from the West Defense of the Year is the Farmington Farmers. I agree with you there. And for some of the points you brought up there, we talked a lot about their offense throughout the season, and for good reason. Yeah. And I think near the end of the year, when some players were banged up and their offense maybe wasn't at a full 100%, I think that's where you saw that defense really come up huge, right? Like that's where you saw names like Carter Lambin, 110 total tackles on the season. Jared Fauser, 87 total tackles on the season. Mitch, I don't think we have the final overall number, but Carter Landman blocking punts and kicks was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was at least 8. Were we talking like 8 over the last couple of years?
Yeah, we'll round up to 10.
There you go.
Yeah, you mentioned Jarrett Fowler. I don't think it's talked about enough. Just a tremendous player. So yeah, it's the whole operation there for the Farmington defense that I think gives them this award, and it's well deserved.
Yep, absolutely. So congratulations to the Farmington Farmers, the View from the West Defense of the Year. So here we go, Mitch. We got Team of the Year left, and then we get into our Players of the Year, and then our big one, our Heisman Trophy, the View from the West Player of the Year. So when we're talking about Teams of the Year, we'll break it down between 11-man and 8-man. Let's get into the candidates for the nominees for 11-man Team of the Year.
Okay. Again, certainly had some great teams and some great conference champions this year. For the sake of this category, we're narrowing it down to 3. Okay. First up is Lena Winslow, the NUIC champions, undefeated once again, barrel their way through the playoffs, 5th consecutive Class 1A state championship appearance for the Panthers. They'll be the odds-on favorite to get back for a 6th straight year next year. What a performance from Coach Aaron, his longtime staff there, and this great program, these great players. To, as you mentioned, it's an expectation, and then there's execution, and they have both. So another incredible year for Lena Winslow. All right, now going to a much bigger school. How about Quincy? Back-to-back undefeated regular seasons, back-to-back Western Big Six crowns, and back-to-back 7A quarterfinal appearances. Certainly in the history of Quincy football, I think you can narrow down this team this year and probably the team last year as 2 of the best, if not the best, in school history. Really looking forward to that documentary coming out about that. But boy, it's been so much fun to cover this group the last 2 years. But in this year in particular, since we're sticking here in 2024, again, the names that we called every week, one of the most talented groups we've ever had the privilege of covering, and a fantastic group of Blue Devils to cheer for. And again, a Team of the Year finalist.
Yeah, yep, definitely, for sure. All right, Mitch, one more candidate, Farmington. The Farmers, talked a lot about them. We'll still talk about them down the way here. But the LLC Large Sides champions, top seed in Class 2A, their first trip ever to the state semifinals. So great year. Coach Vallis was our Coach of the Year from the LLC Large Side for good reason. The program he's been building up. And I feel like similar to what we talked about with like Dupec and some of these teams, it's like Farmington has been good, but they continue to build upon it, right? And this felt like one more building block. I think that Farmington group needs to be on this list for 11-man Team of the Year as well.
Yeah, these are 3 really quality programs and had fantastic years. So again, a lot of great teams in 11-man. Certainly we are leaving out some conference division champions here, but these 3, I think, stood above the rest.
Yep. All right. So, Mitch, I will open up the envelope for our 11-man Team of the Year. And I think for me, 3 great candidates like you called out, but I think it's the expectation every year in Lena Winslow to be at that state championship game and to win that state championship. And sometimes I think that expectation or that, it's a given they're going to be there, which is crazy to say. So maybe they kind of like get lost in the shuffle almost because of other great stories like Quincy and Farmington. But I think for me, the edge is that Lena Winslow has been so good for so many years. And again, this year, they're undefeated. They roll through the regular season. They get through the postseason. They roll into the state championship game once again. I think for me, I'm going Lena Winslow, and I'm going with the Panthers because of this. Just the target's always on their back, and they continue to answer. And once again, this year it was like, do they have enough? Can they get the job done? And they continue to answer the call.
Yeah, I'm with you and with agreeance. I think this is a close category for sure. But again, for all the reasons that you mentioned, and even going into the playoffs, that 1A North is always super tough. And Lena was not the top seed this year. And so we knew that they were going to probably face up with a pretty tough Leroy team eventually. And they just did what Lena Winslow does to most opponents they play. And again, to be able to do that year in and year out, it's just an incredible accomplishment. But this team for 2024 especially, really enjoyed covering them. They're a young group. Again, I think I mentioned that they're probably already the odds-on favorite to make it back to the state championship for a 6th straight year, because they're going to bring a lot of this group back next year, and we could be talking about them again. So yeah, I'm with you here. Congratulations to Lena Winslow, the View from the West 11-man team of the year. You have got some shirts headed your way.
That's right. We'll be in contact with head coach Rick Arend, and Breedloves will get you set up with some t-shirts for the team and the coaches. Maybe Coach Rickles will get a Team of the Year t-shirt there, Mitch.
He might. If he's nice, he might.
All right. Well, here we go. The 8-man Team of the Year. Mitch, give us the nominees, and I'll let you lead right into it because it's your choice. So you can give us your who our winner is.
Yeah, sure. And again, three phenomenal teams here. A lot of fun to cover this year in 8-man. Let's start with Polo, an undefeated regular season. We just talked about how good that defense was. Had that exciting win over Milledgeville in the regular season. Gus Mumford was a pleasure to watch all year. So Polo is on my nominee short list here. Speaking of Milledgeville, how about them? They scored 1 million points this year. I don't know what the final tally was. A tremendous offense there with Coach Roble. First ever trip to the state championship. First ever time getting past the quarterfinals. So a tremendous season for Milledgeville. But what more can we say about the Amboy Clippers? Back-to-back state champions. Just a tremendous team. They are so balanced on offense. They could give the ball to any 4 or 5 different guys, and they had that, just ability to score at will seemingly in some games. And again, if one player wasn't having a great game, they had someone else kind of filling in their shoes. So tremendously balanced, deep team there at Amboy, and my third finalist there for 8-man team of the year.
All right. So Mitch, who is your 8-man team of the year?
And again, great teams, but hard to deny success here. And that's the Amboy Clippers will be my team of the year here in 8-man. As mentioned, state champions. Head coach Scott Payne has done a fantastic job with this group. Some names that we've been calling the past couple of years were still on this team. So it's been a sustained effort from this Clipper program. But boy, it just a tremendous group, tough group to beat. Ridgewood did it in the regular season, but Amboy started playing really, really good football towards the end of the season and certainly in the playoffs. So congratulations to Amboy as the 8-man team of the year. And there will be some shirts headed that way as well.
Yep, absolutely. We'll be in contact with them. I totally agree. I think the job they've done this year and, over the past couple of years, but in particular this year for this award, I think to step up and continue to answer such a balanced attack, so many players that can beat you. And I think a lot of that goes to coaching, right? Putting players in the right spots and having guys ready to execute. So congratulations to Amboy. All right, Mitch, here we go. Are we ready to talk the players of the year from each conference and each division?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's start in the Western Big Six. And Mitch, when we're starting in the Western Big Six and talking about potential player of the year candidates, we have to start with Quincy. I think we have to start with our defending player of the year from last year, our View from the West player of the year, Braden Little. He's back in the mix here for Quincy. 4,132 yards passing, 50 total touchdowns to cap off a remarkable career. So we'll get more into him in a minute, but he's certainly on this list here. He's on the list. But when you're talking about Quincy, Jarius Rice, also over 1,000 yards rushing, 993 yards receiving, 36 total touchdowns. So another just remarkable season for him. Another clear-cut nominee here. But again, the list for Quincy continues. Tykel Hammers, over 1,400 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. You had Rico Clay, 923 yards, 11 touchdowns. He also had 3 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball. A few other names here, when you talk about Moline, such a good rushing attack. Hard to pinpoint one player, right, in particular, because you had Eli Warren, Mark Carey, Adrian Cooper. They all 3 did the job. Eli Warren, 776 yards, Mark Carey, 726, Adrian Cooper, 511. They each had, a handful of touchdowns. So that's kind of hard to figure, to figure out who takes the lead there for a nomination.
Right.
You also have Jamar Range from Galesburg, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, had the huge performance. Was that in week 2 where he put up like 300 some yards rushing?
Yeah, I think he did it twice. He had 2 just really phenomenal weeks. Yeah, great running back there in Jamar.
Yep. Isaiah Navarrete from United Township, over 1,000 yards, over 1,000 total yards, 12 touchdowns. Caden Phillips from Sterling, 745 total yards, 12 touchdowns. I don't think his numbers quite indicate kind of the dynamic playmaker he was. Does that make sense?
No.
I think he's a guy that was really a weapon and an asset for that Sterling offense. But there's some of the names around the Western Big Six. Mitch, we got to narrow it down. Give us our narrowed list.
Okay. I would say that our nominees here are finalists anyway. Starting Quincy, it's Braden Little, it's Jarius Rice, and it's Tykel Hammers. And then Isaiah Navarrete from United Township is a finalist as well here. A fantastic year for him. And the Panthers, as you said, over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. So with Little, Rice, Hammers, and Navarrete here.
Yep. All right. Well, Mitch, who's opening the ballot? Who's opening the envelope for the Western Big Six Player of the Year?
I'll kick this one off.
Go ahead.
And again, we just rattled off, 10 names or so. A lot of great talent here in this conference, but there's just one name that stands above the rest and has for the last couple of years, and that's Braden Little, quarterback from Quincy. Again, this year alone, 4,132 yards passing, 50 total touchdowns. I think that was 47 passing and 3 rushing. And what a year. Undefeated, conference champions, 7A quarterfinalists. Historically goes down in the record books as one of the best to ever do it in IHSA history. So Braden Little, the Western Big Six Player of the Year for the 2nd consecutive year.
Yep. And he's back in the mix for the potential to be our View from the West Player of the Year, our View from the West MVP. So we'll get to that down the road here. Let's jump into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Mitch, we'll start in the Rock Division. So in the Three Rivers Rock Division, we'll go through some of the names. Cullen Schweigen from Rock Ridge. At quarterback, you had Cale Filler from Orion. 2 names that were on the list, I believe, last year, continue to get the job done. How about Evan Bushman, the quarterback from Newman? Passed for 958 yards and 11 touchdowns. I'll be honest, we haven't put a Newman quarterback's name on the list. I don't think in the history of our podcast.
No,
based
not
on
that
what,
I remember.
No, based on what Newman normally does. So for him to almost have 1,000 yards passing, Evan Bushman gets on the list. But of course, you have the standard rushing attack for Newman. Briar Ivy had over 600 yards, 10 touchdowns. Daniel Kelly, he's an interesting name. We'll talk about him, down the road here in a minute, but he's on the list as well. Aiden Fisher from Orion, Mason Gray from Mercer County, Dimitri Larson from Erie Prophetstown. Some wide receivers from the Three Rivers, Landon Wheatley and Owen Steele, both for Rock Ridge. Owen Steele went over 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. Landon Wheatley also had 472 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jake Bainbridge caught a lot of the passes from Cale Filler. He gets on this list as well. So, Mitch, there's some of the names. There's the big names to look for. But give us our nominees, our 4 official nominees for the Track Rock Division.
Yeah. So looking at this division, again, some great candidates. Let's start in Rock Ridge. I've got two: Cullen Schweigen, quarterback, and Landon Bull, all-stater. Don't see too many guys. We talk a lot about offensive guys. We talk a lot about specialists. Let's give some love for the linemen and the linebackers here. Landon Bull, great player for the Rockets, a big part of both sides of the ball for them. Speaking of both sides of the ball, Daniel Kelly from Newman, a phenomenal player. Maybe more impressive to watch him on defense. He just flies to the ball, racking up the tackles. But again, you can put him on offense, rushes the ball really, really well. And then Cale Filler, a tremendous quarterback from Orion, only a sophomore, already holds a ton of records for them, and fully anticipate him continuing to put up such numbers as the seasons go on. So my four would be Cullen Schweigen, Dan Kelly, Cale Filler, and Landon Bull.
I believe Cale Filler is a junior. He'll be a senior next year. So it's 1 year left. So
right.
Yep. So but either way, him and Cullen Schweigen, kind of battling there has been a lot of fun in this conference. But it's fun to see two kind of elite level quarterbacks in Filler and Schweigen. And then the other two nominees in this list are two kind of elite level defensive game changers in Daniel Kelly and Landon Bull. I love the mix of this group from the Track Rock, because all of them could change a game, right? All of them could impact a game in a variety of ways. It's just fun to see the different ways they could do it. So, all right, Mitch, here we go. You got the envelope. Who is our Track Rock Player of the Year?
Yeah, just ran through those four nominees. And again, these are tremendous players, all bringing their own kind of specific talent set to their respective teams. But the one that just has stood out the last couple of seasons, and the kind of the same way that we just talked about with Braden Little, I'm looking at Rock Ridge's quarterback there, Cullen Schweigen, sophomore, has led this team, a dual threat kid, can beat you with his arm, can certainly make you pay on the ground as well. Does a great job distributing the ball to a lot of different targets and a lot of different teammates. This is a fun Rock Ridge group. It's a group that's going to be successful again next year. And with Cullen Schweigen at the helm, leading that offense, we could be talking about him for a couple more years as well. So what a tremendous career he's already had. And I think a very deserving winner here of the Track Rock Player of the Year.
Yeah, when you look through the numbers that Cullen Schweigen put up this year, 2,660 yards passing, 700 yards rushing, 32 total touchdowns. I mean, You're talking about like big time numbers for a program that's playing pretty high level football in Rock Ridge, and he's leading the way as a sophomore. I think that, that's a clear-cut candidate. That's a clear-cut winner here from me. So I agree. Congratulations to Cullen Schweigen, our Three Rivers Athletic Conference Rock Division Player of the Year. All right, Mitch, let's get into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference on the Mississippi side of things. A couple quarterbacks we got to talk about here. Will Lott from Princeton, Carter Brown from Sherrard making the move from wide receiver to the quarterback position. I think this division, though, really led by the play at running back. When you talk about Peyton Thompson from Monmouth Roseville, Casey Etheridge from Princeton, Alex Duarte from Kewanee, both doing it on both sides of the ball very effectively. And also, same thing can be said for Nick Houston from Monmouth Roseville. And then you can't forget about Division I commit to Northwestern, Noah Laporte at wide receiver for Princeton. So there's some of the names, Mitch. Give us the nominees, the four official nominees for the Three Rivers Athletic Conference Mississippi side of things, Player of the Year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it at the very start of this division and how strong the running back class is. You could throw Ace Christensen in there too, as just another dynamic back. But to narrow it down to 4, not easy, but we'll do it anyway. Let's start with Peyton Thompson from Monmouth Roseville. How about Casey Etheridge from Princeton, Alex Duarte from Kewanee, and Nick Houston from Monmouth Roseville? 4 tremendous running backs that were a lot of fun to cover this year and had fantastic seasons for their teams.
Yeah, so we'll break down the numbers here real quick. Peyton Thompson had over 1,400 yards rushing, 20 touchdowns, and 2 receiving touchdowns as well. You had Casey Etheridge with just over 1,700 yards rushing, 26 total touchdowns, 29 tackles as well. Nick Houston and Alex Duarte, they were very effective on both sides of the ball. Alex Duarte for Kewanee, 1,455 yards rushing, 22 total touchdowns, 87 solo tackles. So really great effort from him, an all-stater for good reason. And you also had Nick Houston from Monmouth Roseville, 415 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns, 60 tackles. But Mitch, how about 9 sacks as well? So really effective on the defensive side of the ball. Those running backs, those 4 right there, I think they kind of led the way in this year in particular. Great nominees here. Mitch, who do we go with? Who is the Track Mississippi Player of the Year?
Well, if you remember last year, Greg, the Track East Player of the Year, as it's also widely known, came from Kewanee and Brady Clark. And for me, talk about a guy that you just rattled off his stats, tons of yards on the ground, ton of solo tackles, became the all-time school leader in points scored, and set the single season touchdown record with 21. Finished off his regular season with a 296 yard and 5 touchdown game. That is Alex Duarte from Kewanee. My vote for Player of the Year from the Track Mississippi side.
Yeah, I love this pick because I think that throughout the season, I heard from different coaches that this was the matchup nightmare that they had on both sides of the ball, right? How do you account for him on offense? How do you account for him on defense? He was so effective on both sides of the ball. I think when you look through the numbers we just referenced, he was a threat, on offense and on defense. So congratulations to Alex Duarte, our Three Rivers Athletic Conference Mississippi side of things, Player of the Year. Let's get into the Lincoln Land Conference. We'll start in the large division. Some of the names we got to talk about, the names we're very familiar with: Lane Wheelwright from Farmington, quarterback. Also, Braden Holthouse at quarterback from Macomb. They battled each other in that game we talked about, Mitch, earlier in this episode as a potential Game of the Year candidate. From Elmwood Brimfield, though, you had 2 guys leading the attack on the ground, a rushing attack there between Bo Windish and Matthew Glenn, both going well over 1,500 yards, very effective running backs. But when you're talking about rushing the ball, Logan Utt from Farmington, Lane Wheelwright got a lot of the headlines, but Logan Utt kind of did a lot of the dirty work, right? Getting the job done on the ground when they needed it. You had Nick Johnson from Illini West going over 1,000 yards in the regular season. Elijah Endress from Bureau Valley was an all-conference player as well. How about Jack Gronwald? He was receiving a lot of the passes from Lane Wheelwright. He was over 1,000 yards this year. Drew Watson from Macomb also had a great season catching passes from Holthouse. So, Mitch, there's some of the names. Give us the official. Give us our 4 candidates, our 4 nominees.
Yeah, hard to narrow this division down to 4, but it's the nature of this show, I suppose. Let's start in the quarterback room. Looking at Lane Wheelwright from Farmington and Braden Holthouse from Macomb. Just 2 absolutely phenomenal players. I don't think Holthouse gets enough credit. We'll stick over with Farmington on the wide receiver side with Jack Gronwald, and then Bo Windish from Elmwood Brimfield. It could be him or Matthew Glenn here, but we'll give it to Bo. 26 touchdowns on the year on the ground. So I'll go Wheelwright, Holdhouse, Windish, and Gronwald here.
Yeah. Look through some of the numbers here. Lane Wheelwright, over 2,000 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 332 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns. So that puts him at 34 total. For Holdhouse with McComb, man, he was pretty much keeping pace with him. You had 1,933 passing yards, 22 touchdowns. He had 718 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. So 33 total for him. So those two, I mean, neck and neck with each other here. Great season from both of them.
Yep.
And then you have Bo Windish and Matthew Glenn on the running game on the same team. And you had Windish going for 17-11. So 26 total touchdowns. No, sorry, 30 total touchdowns. That was through 10 weeks of the season. You had Matthew Glenn going for 1,690 yards rushing. That was through 10 weeks. So maybe not their total season, but he had 21 touchdowns as well. Like we mentioned, Logan Utt went for over 1,000 yards. Nick Johnson over 1,000 yards. Jack Gronwald over 1,000 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. So here we go, Mitch. You got Wheelwright, Holdhouse, Windish at running back, and Gronwald at wide receiver. Where do you go? Who is our LLC large side player of the year?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is probably the toughest out of any of the divisions and conferences that we cover. These are just tremendous players. A lot of fun to watch. Dual threat quarterbacks. Really good running back there in Windish or Glenn. Pick your poison there. Gronwald, obviously, a phenomenal receiver and really good on defense as well. Look, I'm going to stick with kind of a theme here when we talk about quarterbacks. And last year, this award went to Lane Wheelwright. Had a phenomenal year last year, and I think he improved on that this year. So in a very tight race between Wheelwright and Holdhouse, my view from the West Lincoln Land large player of the year for the second consecutive year is Lane Wheelwright from Farmington. 34 total touchdowns, phenomenal player, and again led that group to the state semifinals. Tremendous season, tremendous career for Lane Wheelwright.
I agree with you. I was, when I first started diving into the numbers, I knew it was close, but it was closer than I thought it was between Wheelwright and Holdhouse. That was a really tough decision for me. But also Bo Windish, I really liked what he was doing all year. I was impressed with the way he continued to get the job done for this Elmwood Brimfield team. And it's remarkable that Windish and Glenn were so close to each other throughout the season as well. Those were it's a lot of names here that were all really close is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And the other thing too with Wheelwright is he was hurt at the end of the year.
Yep.
So that's not a complete season total. So, where would his numbers be had he stayed healthy, and certainly had Logan Utt to carry that load for that Farmington offense. But yeah, tremendous talent in this division. Hard to narrow it down to even 4 or 5 nominees. Certainly even harder to open up that envelope and give it to one player. But again, back to back for Lane Wheelwright in this conference.
Yep. Congratulations, Lane Wheelwright, for the second year in a row. He is our LLC large school division player of the year from View from the West podcast. All right, here we go, Mitch. The Lincoln Land Conference small school side of things. Let's go through some of the names spread out pretty equally here between quarterback and running back candidates, nominees here. Dylan Steelman from Stark County. Great season from him. Jake Williams from Princeville really led the way at the quarterback position, airing it out for the Princes. Maddox Heitzler, interesting season for him, stepping in and really stepping up for this Anawan Weathersfield Titans team. You had Drake DeJanes from Rova Williamsfield going for over 1,000 yards this season with 20 total touchdowns. But the running backs, a lot of good running backs in the LLC small school side of things. Nolan Orwig from Stark County, went over 1,300 yards, 23 total touchdowns. Rylan Reimholz from Rushville Industry, over 1,200 total rushing yards and 15 touchdowns. Devin Ori from Anawan Weathersfield. Jack Cordell, over 1,000 yards and 17 touchdowns from Rova Williamsfield. But I feel like, Mitch, we have to mention Zeb Rashid when we're talking through this list. I mean, maybe the most talented player in the conference, one of the most feared players in the conference that coaches had to account for. His season was derailed with injuries, but you saw it near the end of the regular season. He had 205 yards and 3 touchdowns against Rova Williamsfield late in the year. So he finally was able to kind of get going and get healthy. So I think this is one of those players where he was our LLC Small School Player of the Year a year ago. And this season, injury, health-wise didn't quite go the way he wanted to, but we got to mention him in this list. You also had Hunter Johnson from Princeville, 841 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns coming, from Jake Williams, that Princeville offense airing it out and doing it really well. But Mitch, we got to narrow it down to 4. That's what we do here. So give me the 4 names, the nominees for the LLC Small School Player of the Year.
Yeah, well, in this division, we'll stick with 3 quarterbacks. That'll be Dylan Steelman from Stark County, Jake Williams from Princeville, Maddox Heitzler from Anawan Weathersfield, and then add in a running back. Hard to pick one, but it's Nolan Orwig from Stark County.
Yeah, I think Nolan Orwig was that running back that really, as Stark County went, right? He was the guy when he was playing really well, especially moving late in the season. He was the key to success. But you look at these quarterbacks, there's some really good quarterback play here, and all maybe doing it a little bit different, right? I mean, I think that certainly Steelman from Stark County and Maddox Heitzler from Anawan Weathersfield, both more dual threat guys. Maddox Heitzler is an interesting story. He steps into quarterback, and, I think because of injuries and because of things shuffling around for this Titans team, but really got comfortable there. 626 passing yards, 4 touchdowns in the regular season, along with 667 yards rushing and 13 touchdowns. So kind of a, dual threat, but pretty equal across the board. Dylan Steelman passed for 813. He rushed for 637, 16 total touchdowns. But Jake Williams, over 1,000 yards. He had 1,820 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, another 269 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns there. So 32 total touchdowns. Really great effort from him. Mitch, what are you thinking here? Who is our LLC Small School Player of the Year?
Yeah, another tough one. Close in a voting for sure. I think in the end, it comes down to a team, again, that made that push this year, kind of took the next step up, started 7-0 on the year, and that was very much in part to the play of quarterback Jake Williams of Princeville. Like you just mentioned, over 2,000 all-purpose yards, 32 total touchdowns. Again, great players, great quarterbacks. For me, Jake Williams at Princeville just really, really impressed me this season. And again, you saw the results on the field for this Prince's team.
Yep, I'm going with that as well. Congratulations to Jake Williams, our LLC Small School Player of the Year. He was first team All-State for good reason, led this Princeville team back to the playoffs. So congratulations to Jake Williams and this Princeville team on a great season. All right, Mitch, let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini. Here's some names, some big-time names, some big-time performances. Starting with Cooper Hoffman, a name we're familiar with. I think he's a name that we knew would be on this list when the season started. Certainly very deserving of a nomination. Roman Romer from Galena. He did the job on offense and on defense. Really impressed with what he did for the Pirates this season. You got a pair of running backs from Lena Winslow, the Thunder and the Lightning, that are Aiden Schlichting and Aiden Wild, or Alec Schlichting and Aiden Wild. Really impressed with them. Obviously, leading Lena Winslow back to a state championship game appearance. But how about Mark Detweiler from Stockton? He went over 1,000 yards this year, 21 touchdowns, getting the Blackhawks back into the playoffs. Miles Schumacher from Galena, also over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Jackson Dietrich from Dupec, over 900 yards, 938, 14 total touchdowns. And Jacob Hausingay from Fulton, 668 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. So there you go. There's some names, Mitch. Give us the 4 nominees for NUIC Player of the Year.
Yeah, 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs here. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Cooper Hoffman from Dupec, Roman Romer from Galena, and our running backs, Alex Schlichting from Lena Winslow and Mark Detweiler from Stockton.
Yeah, I mean, when you start looking through the list here, Alex Schlichting, 1,972 yards, 198 yards receiving, 29 total touchdowns. And right behind him, Aiden Wild, not an official nominee, but 1,393 yards and 22 touchdowns. So right there with him. But let's talk about the quarterback play here. Roman Romer, 1,298 yards passing, 7 passing touchdowns. He also had 643 yards rushing and 12 touchdowns. But man, Cooper Hoffman, the numbers he put up are crazy. 2,152 passing yards, 867 rushing yards, 45 total touchdowns. Just a dynamic playmaker, dual threat quarterback, getting the job done for the Rivermen. So here we go, Mitch. Who is the NUIC Player of the Year?
Again, we talk about this conference all the time as the best conference in the state of Illinois, and in our minds, the numbers back that up. So there's always plenty of talent here, and this year was no different. But again, for the numbers you just listed, there is one name that stands above the rest. 45 touchdowns this year and over 3,000 all-purpose yards. Who else but Cooper Hoffman from Dupec is the 2024 View from the West Player of the Year in the NUIC.
Yep. Congratulations to Cooper Hoffman. A great season, a great career, and just, really always been impressed with what the Rivermen have continued to build there. And Cooper Hoffman was a big part of that. So congratulations to him. And on the flip side, you look at Alex Schlichting and Aiden Wild, they're not going anywhere, right? Like, those guys will be back. I believe Mark Detweiler from Stockton, I believe he'll be back as well. He was a junior. So a lot of talent returning in the NUIC. So a lot to look forward to there as well.
Yeah, and certainly when we try and put Cooper Hoffman's career in perspective, I mean, you're talking about one of the best in this conference's history. I mean, 7,203 total yards. That is tops in the conference. 102 total touchdowns, also top in the conference. Career-wise numbers here for passing, 5,160 yards, 64 touchdowns. It's a 66 completion rate as well. That's first in the conference's history. And then we talk about that dual threat, over 2,000 career rushing yards and 38 touchdowns. So just, again, a tremendous season worthy of this honor. But when you look at a career, very few better in the history of the NUIC, the long history of the NUIC, than Cooper Hoffman.
Yeah, he definitely left his mark. And it's always been fun to watch the way this program has continued to build. And Cooper Hoffman was certainly a big reason for that. So congratulations to Cooper Hoffman, our NUIC Player of the Year. All right, Mitch, let's jump into the I8FA, our 8-man Player of the Year from the View from the West podcast. Let's go through some of the names. A lot of names here that we're very familiar with. We've called them out throughout the season, and for good reason. Gus Mumford, the quarterback from Polo, but you also had Eddie Jones from Amboy, obviously leading them to a state championship, back-to-back state championships. Kyson Francis bursting on the scene for Milledgeville as a freshman. and leading the Missiles, doing a great job there. You have Josh McKendry from Amboy at running back, going well over 1,000 yards, 23 touchdowns. Roy Sandberg from Ridgewood. Hayden Schofield getting almost near 2,000 yards on the season and 23 touchdowns. Very impressed by him. Carter Livingood from Milledgeville, the All-Stater, doing a little bit of everything for the Missiles, just an all-around athlete. Caleb Llanos, a wide receiver from Amboy, 765 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. Micah Tom Smith from Milledgeville, we got to put his name in the mix here. But I think one thing that needs to be included is this Amboy squad. For as good as they are, it's hard to find an individual or even two individuals that lead the way because they were so balanced, right? We talked about McKendry and Jones and Llanos, but how about Braden Klein, Quinn Leffelman, Ed Fry? Just so many names here for this Amboy Clippers team. It's hard to narrow it down.
Yeah, and that makes it hard in these kind of awards to only call out one of them. So I think it's fair that we gave kudos to all these players because, again, it's a tremendous team, and they're going to hit you from a variety of different ways. So, yeah, Amboy's whatever you call a bunch of ships.
I don't know.
An arsenal.
There you go. Yeah, okay, that might be right. That could be right or wrong.
It's probably not right at all. I know, I know what the word is, and I can't think of it. Armada.
Ah, there you go. Okay. I did not think the word armada would be said in this podcast, but here we are.
No, full of surprises here. But Greg, a lot of names. A lot of names here, Nate, man. I'm going to narrow it down the best to my ability here. Including in Amboy, we will call out one. Was the leading rusher, was the leading touchdown getter. That's Josh McKendry. Let's stay in the running back room here because I think this is a player who didn't get as much attention as he probably should have. Orangeville had a tough year.
Yep.
But Hayden Schofield really shined, almost, as you said, almost 2,000 yards rushing, 23 touchdowns. Carter Livingood, great season for Milledgeville. And how about Gus Mumford, the first ever View from the West 8-man player of the week?
Correct. Yep.
And 35 touchdowns on the year. That dual threat player, only one interception on the year. And again, that Polo was undefeated in the regular season. Gus Mumford, a big part why.
Yeah. So, like you said, Gus Mumford, Hayden Schofield, Carter Livingood, and Josh McKendry are our nominees. When you look at it, Gus Mumford, 1,228 rushing yards, 22 touchdowns, 810 passing yards, 13 touchdowns to just one interception. So very effective football there. Carter Livingood, I think that you just talk about a kid who was ready to step up and make a play anywhere on the field, right? I just felt like late in the year when they had him at wide receiver early, and then late in the year, he steps in at quarterback and he's there to answer the call. And I think he was very effective leading the Missiles to that state championship game. So I think he's a name that's got to be on this list. Roy Sandberg, like we said, 1,140 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns. Caleb Llanos going 765 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. I know he wasn't one of our official 4 nominees, but man, I just feel like that's a name that I want to include in there too, right? Like, that's a heck of an effort from the receiver position. But overall, Mitch, am I opening the ballot here for the
go for it.
I8FA, the 8-man View from the West Player of the Year? I'll open the envelope. Let's go to Polo. Gus Mumford is our 8-man Player of the Year for View from the West podcast. Like we talked about, a great season for him. Dual threat quarterback, really kind of the heartbeat of that team, it felt like. And when he was playing really great, they were playing really great football. I saw him in their win over Milledgeville in the regular season. Now, they fell short in the postseason to Milledgeville, but overall, I feel like this Polo team is always in the mix. They're always playing high-end football in 8-man. And Gus Mumford's a big reason why this year, I think his numbers kind of separated himself. So congratulations to Gus Mumford for our I8FA 8-man player of the year from View from the West podcast. All right, so there we are, Mitch. Let's recap our View from the West players of the year from each conference. So we have Braden Little from the Western Big Six. We have Cullen Schweigen from the Three Rivers Rock Division. We have Alex Duarte from Kewanee in the Three Rivers, Mississippi. We have Lane Wheelwright, Farmington's quarterback from the LLC large side of things. We have Jake Williams, the quarterback from Princeville in the LLC small side of things. In the Northwest Upstate Illini, we have the quarterback from Dupec in Cooper Hoffman. And from 8-man football, our player of the year was Gus Mumford from Polo, the quarterback. So there we go. Mitch, there are our nominees now up for what we call our Heisman Trophy, our player of View from the West player of the year.
Yeah.
So let's start the discussion. We won't open the envelope just yet, but I'll let you, give your opening thoughts here.
A quarterback heavy, right?
Yep.
Lot of quarterbacks here, all but one, and Alex Duarte. And all kind of, again, bring in their own sort of styles into their play for their teams. Certainly you look at a Schweigen and a Wheelwright and a Hoffman, right? Dual threat kids are going to beat you. If one way is not working, they can get you another way. Throw Gus Mumford into that conversation too. Then you look more at Braden Little and Jake Williams, who are more pass first. Certainly Little just put up gaudy numbers with that offense that they run. And Alex Duarte, tremendous career there, wonderful season. Well, you mentioned one of the opposing coach's worst nightmares in terms of matching up against him and running, trying to plan against. So these are 7 tremendous football players. Again, really been fun to cover all of them. Schweigen comes back. Is Gus Mumford a senior?
I believe he is. Yep.
So 6 of the 7 here are seniors. Fantastic careers, great years here in 2024 to cap their career. And again, worthy of their respective player of the year awards in their conferences, and as finalists as the cumulative MVP here.
Yep. Well, there can only be one. There is one overall View from the West player of the year. And Mitch, I think you broke it down very well. A lot of talent here, a lot of, dual threat talent, guys that can get the job done very efficiently, passing the ball, running the ball. And then when you look at, Alex Duarte, his skill set, being able to run the ball, power running game, but on the defensive side of the ball, being able to impact it from the linebacker position. I think that there's all these players can impact a game in a variety of ways. And that's very impressive. But Mitch, like I said, there can only be one. Are we ready to open up the envelope to give the award for the View from the West Player of the Year in 2024?
We are. I will give you the honor of announcing this award, Greg.
Well, we're going to set a little bit of history here on View from the West podcast. Like we said, it's our 5th annual Best in the West award show. For the first time in podcast history, we have a repeat winner. Congratulations to Braden Little. Quincy's quarterback is once again our View from the West Player of the Year. Mitch, we talked about it all year long. It was just week after week. He continued to get the job done, leading a high-end offense that was so efficient, scoring on so many opening drives. Almost every game this season, they scored on the opening drive, opening possession.
Might have been every drive.
It may have been every game they played. Yeah, so just so effective week in and week out, so consistently high-end effective.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel very confident in saying Braden Little is our View from the West player of the year. He's our most valuable player we've seen in our coverage area.
Yeah, certainly in the 5 years that we've had this podcast, I can't think of a better quarterback in a long list of great quarterbacks that we've been able to cover. And that's just a testament to Braden Little's career. And certainly this is a yearly award. And so you look at 4,132 passing yards and 50 total touchdowns. Certainly that, eclipses every other player. Certainly the team success only rivaled by a few others. A great supporting cast too, right? I mean, Jarius Rice, Tykel Hammers, Rico Clay, the list goes on and on and on. And certainly his linemen, but a fantastic talent, gonna miss covering him. And like you said, the two-time now View from the West player of the year. Haven't had that before in our short history. So, it might be a while before we have another two-time winner.
Yeah. Just remarkable couple years here leading this Quincy squad. And, it's been, like you said, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And, we'll miss a lot of these players that we saw in this Quincy squad. You especially, you were following along on their live streams every week. So you saw a lot of it. I saw them firsthand when they came to Moline this season. So a lot of fun highlights to get, a lot of fun highlights to watch. So congratulations once again to Braden Little, our View from the West player of the year for 2024.
Yeah, and let's just further break that down just a little bit further, just to give, again, listeners of this podcast know all about Braden Little, but just to put his career into perspective. Well, let's start with just, I guess, this season. So his 2024 stats that I mentioned, his stats for yards, completions, and touchdowns, they all rank in the top 10 in the IHSA history for all-time individual single season records. But then you pull the curtain back a little bit and look at the career yards. 10,674 career passing yards, sits second all-time. That record was also broken this year by Logan Malachuk, but 119 career passing touchdowns, that sits third all-time in IHSA history. Add in a couple rushing touchdowns there over the years, 125 all-purpose touchdowns. That's good for fifth all-time. 700 completions on the dot, second all-time in IHSA history. And just the accolades piled up. I'm going to name four here. There was many, many more than this. 3-time All-State, 2-time Western Big Six MVP, 3-time Western Big Six All-Conference, but now, as you mentioned, a 2-time View from the West player of the year. Congratulations to Braden Little of Quincy.
So, Mitch, we saw it a week or two ago that, players were putting out their end of season stats and their totals and their highlight videos. And Braden Little, or the Quincy X account, posted a bunch of season ending stats, including Braden Little's career numbers. And they listed him as View from the West player of the year in 2023. They need to update the graphic now because
Yeah, it's got to put on the athletic resume, so to speak. Certainly his numbers speak for himself. He doesn't need our player of the year to further his career. So just a tremendous player. Really, really been a privilege to cover him, and wish him all the best as he plays at the next level.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so Mitch, that wraps it up. That's our awards. Best in the West, the 5th annual award show. We've wrapped it up. It's in the books. And we're headed into the postseason. We're headed into the off season now, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, we're headed into hibernation a little bit, certainly. There'll be some things that happen in the off season, as there always is. If it's coaching changes, if it's teams switching conferences, if it's IHSA rules being updated. We've seen all three of those things already happen or in talks of happening. And the season's only, or the off season's only a couple weeks old. So always we're on the ready. We'll take a break for a little while here. try and enjoy some NFL and some college football, what's left of those seasons. And boy, before we know it, we'll be talking, summer workouts, and looking forward to next fall. So just what a fun year this was, as always. Certainly we had a lot of fun at the state championships, whether we have a team there or not. Hopefully that's something that we can continue to do. Certainly been talking about some changes in how we present the show that we could introduce next year. A new video format, maybe switching up just the style of the show. So not every episode is 3 hours long, even though we know we have some very dedicated listeners who enjoy that and gets them through a drive or a workout or something. So we won't be cutting it down too far, but more to follow on what we are thinking about doing here moving forward. But again, my kudos to you on putting this together and keeping the ship steered the right way. To all of our partners in local media, to all of our fans in the stands who send updates to me on Friday nights, because it's really hard to keep track of all these games. So having eyes in the sky at different games is such a huge compliment to the show. So yeah, thank you to everyone who has followed along this year, new followers, old followers, whomever. It was a great season, and I wouldn't say we're just getting started, because we're now 5 years in, but we have no intentions on slowing down, and only improving every year. That's our goal, is to do something different for our listeners and for these players that we cover, to always put out the best product. So thank you again to everyone who has followed along this year.
Yep, absolutely. You summed it up very well. I would say that, we're not going anywhere. We'll take a little bit of a break, a little hiatus heading into the new year, but I would tell everybody to stay close, stay nearby, stay tuned in, because we may have some episodes throughout the, the new year, the spring, to kind of keep everybody involved, especially if there's news that comes out through the IHSA. But along the way, I think there's plenty to talk about. And then, we'll start gearing up for next season, and we'll have episodes ready to roll probably on a regular basis. Certainly, mid to late summer, we'll be ready to get up and rolling again with conference previews. But stay tuned throughout the beginning of next year. I think we'll have some episodes sporadically just to keep people involved. But Mitch, as you said, thank you to everyone who listens, who follows along. I think as our community continues to grow here, as our listeners continue to grow, it's a ton of fun. It just meeting different people from around the state, from around our area, just getting to know people who enjoy what we're doing is a lot of fun. Yeah. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to also go out and check out the View from the West Fantasy Draft, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. That's Mitch and myself drafting a fantasy team based on the players we've talked about today, along with Kyle Kampmeyer and Ty Taylor. So that's a ton of fun. And Mitch, I think I drafted the best team, so you can go out and vote on that now.
Yeah, well, you won't get my vote, but you can allow that for the fans to vote for. So yeah, fun way to end the year. Again, this episode, the fantasy episode. So yeah, a lot of fun to talk about the year.
Well, thank you to everyone. We will, this will wrap up 2024. We'll talk to you again in 2025. If you get bored, go out and check out highlights on YouTube. Check out all this stuff. That'll keep you occupied for a little while. But thank you to everyone. We'll talk to you again in 2025.
Happy holidays, everybody.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.